And this is essential for every single citizen in this country. This is a debate over freedom of expression. Freedom of speech has become selective. It's not me who's saying that. This is the Chief Justice designate, Justice Sharad Arvind Bobde, Justice S.A. Bobde, in an exclusive conversation with Times of India, has said, and I'm quoting right now from that interview, what India's next Chief Justice believes. There are two sides to the freedom of speech debate, with some getting away with anything and everything in public and on social media platforms, while others get manhandled for expressing their views. Let me repeat this. Justice S.A. Bobde says there are two sides to the freedom of speech debate, with some getting away with anything and everything in public and social media platforms, while the others get manhandled for expressing their views. That's the end of the quote. And as the next Chief Justice of India sparks a freedom of speech debate, just yesterday, a man was arrested by the West Bengal police for some really distasteful and abusive remarks made by him on social media. Now, while we as a channel condemn what was written against Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, and it's so disgusting, so distasteful that I don't even want to repeat it here, we do ask the question, has freedom of speech become selective? In certain cases, are abusive trolls allowed to get away with whatever they want to say and whoever they want to abuse? In other cases, do people get arrested and be sent behind bars for the simplest of the things that they say? In some cases, do we cry foul about freedom of expression? And in other cases, do we completely forget about freedom of expression and speech and use the law to gag and to jail people? There are two sides of this coin, beautifully put forward by Justice Bobde. So let's open up this to a bigger conversation. Tausif Khan, advocate and a political analyst, joins us this evening. Fuad Halim, leader of the CPIM. Shikha Mukherjee, senior journalist. Raman Malik, spokesperson of the BJP. And Vivekanand Nartham, a political analyst. Let me actually begin by going across to Shikha Mukherjee on this story. And Ms. Mukherjee, do you agree that, we have different benchmarks for different people when it comes to freedom of expression?
We have different laws for different people, is how I would put it. And Justice Bobde certainly knows this better than I do. We are only looking at what is happening for the simple reason that there are people who are trolling the opposition. There are people who are trolling from the political trolling has now gone completely out of hand. The kind of language that is used, the kind of threats that are used, and I think the best example of that is when Sushma Swaraj, her husband, was told to beat her for issuing a passport to a couple of mixed marriage or whatever it may be. Two people from two different religions getting married and trying to get a passport. And there have been innumerable examples of what is all right for some people to say and what is not all right for other people to say. In that situation, filthy language has become par for the course. And it's all over the place. It's there on Facebook, it's there on Twitter, it's there everywhere. And if I were to sort of take this as the reaction of the political class, what I am seeing is the political class is peculiarly selective on who it decides has committed a cyber crime. If it is against them, then it is selectively a cyber crime. If it is against their opposition, no one cares. I mean, I've just been looking at this stuff, and it's shocking. Cyber crime against a Congress leader, cyber crime against a Facebook post, cyber crime for trolling to potential women who got elected subsequently to the Lok Sabha.
Yes.
So, you have this range of things. And then you have the freedom of the press being challenged, say in the case of Yogi Adityanath's government in UP, where two journalists very recently, and I'm just going by the recent cases, two journalists were sometime in June and very recently obscene comments and spreading rumors. They were arrested. And what were they doing? There were people these were people, of them at least, were showing what was happening to midday meals and the delivery of midday meals. So this is selective. There are other people who are trolling, including telling former External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj's husband to beat her, and they're going scot free. So
yes, so let's ask that question tonight.
Freedom of expression is political today.
Correct.
It's
Absolutely.
not a right. It is not a law. It's not a constitutional guarantee. It has become a tool in the hands of the political class.
So, Shikha Mukherjee, let me ask that question to our political representatives on this panel tonight. And let me begin with Mr. Raman Malik. Mr. Raman Malik, this is what the next Chief Justice of India is saying. The freedom of expression is different for different people. Do you agree tonight that it depends on which political party is ruling that state? And that's how it varies.
Well, very correctly said by the CJI designate, and very correctly said, and I believe that statement makes a whole circle, because freedom of expression, whether it is absolute or not, is also one part which is there in our constitution. Absolute and freedom of expression for people, freedom of expression for people in media and people in seats of power, and then the freedom of expression for a common person. Very correctly said by the CJI. I must make you remember that, so many adjectives given to a common man who turned out to become the Chief Minister and then the Prime Minister of India, amply given all kind of adjectives. But then that was freedom of expression, not condemned, not debated upon. But then, yes, this must be debated. What was the first amendment that we had in our constitution? It was about the freedom of expression only.
No, but do you agree that it depends, and the swift action by the police and the swift action in various states depends on who is speaking and what you are saying? For example, in West Bengal, if you put out even if you put out a joke and a funny meme against the chief minister, you can be jailed. And the same chief minister will take on the central government and speak about intolerance by the Modi government. But for example, in Uttar Pradesh, a story critical of the government can get you in jail.
Minister,
so I am saying our political parties and state police departments acting and using this law only where it suits them and where they feel like using it.
Ma'am, two things. Let me put one thing very clear. The central government is looking into this issue very seriously, and the needful to protect the rights of people of a democratic state are being looked at, and how law serves the people and the democracy rather than the law becoming a tool in the hand of few has to be looked into, and the government is aware of it. We are working on it, but must start looking at what has happened. Must not forget 2012, 2012, and if I correctly remember, in 2012, there was a filmmaker who made a film of a ghost from future or something.
Okay.
And it was a little critical of Mamata Banerjee and TMC.
Correct.
The film was taken out. We must not forget the
We all
IPS
saw the
officer,
film,
I'm forgetting the name, Nazrul
it's called
Islam or
Bhuter
somebody.
Bobishot.
Yes.
Thoroughly good movie. We all saw it on the big screen. We didn't have to see pirated
And he
edition.
was treated.
Okay, let me take that point, those points across to our other political representatives. And Fuad Halim, is this the reality? When the common man gets trolled,
last point that I want to make is
when news anchors get trolled and abused, when celebrities get trolled and abused, we don't see such swift action by the police. We see such swift action when the chief minister is mocked or any sitting minister from the central government is criticized.
Well,
different benchmark for freedom of expression.
Well, that has been what you call very nicely put across by the Chief Justice of India, that we have got a bandwidth of freedom of speech never seen before in India, but it is partial. It is some people have access to that bandwidth and some people are penalized if they want to access that bandwidth, and that has been put forward clearly. And social media seems to be one area which the Supreme Court is applying its mind. It has asked the central government to act quickly before the middle of January 2020, and it comes as a slap across the knuckles for the central government, because the central government has been basically dragging its feet on this question. Now, because government is dragging its feet both at the central and the state level, it has definitely become a weapon or a stick to beat people who are not in tune with what the government
Chaudhary,
is
the best abusers
following the
of the
government's
state,
tune and tone.
The nation
And
are there with the left. So you must amend yourself
this is
first.
clearly time and again being presented here in West Bengal. We've seen a professor of a reputed university having to spend time in jail for creating a cartoon. Now that's how sensitive our chief minister is. She is not in a position to listen to any sort of criticism. We've seen a young man raise his question on the cost of farm produce being purchased by the state government, and he was promptly sent to jail. And we've seen that across the board, whether it be an individual speaking at a public meeting or it be the social media. This insensitivity to listen to criticism of any sort, I think so, is the core fountainhead from which this type of behavior is reflected. And definitely somebody in power uses power. Narendra Modi uses at the central level, Mamata Banerjee uses at the state level, and I think so they are in tune with each other, not only in this, but they are in tune with each other on a number of other things also. And definitely what stands compromised is Article 19
where the Prime Minister
1A
has acted like Mamata Banerjee.
The right to speech that actually gives the people of India the right to his or her own speech. Now that entered into the constitution through absolute concrete study, deliberations, and that right was given to each and every citizen. And we gave to ourselves this constitution, and we promised that our citizens would have that right. It seems that certain citizens who are elected as chief minister and prime minister would not like the other citizens of India to share the same right, and they are partisan.
Okay.
Now the chief justice has clearly said that certain people are using that bandwidth, and as people who look at the
don't forget
media,
the killing
people
comrades,
are talking about each other on social media and
So
otherwise.
let
also
me ask that
we
question
see
to Tausif
that
Khan.
the Bharatiya
So,
Janata Party
I will
is
take
one
it to the
party
next step.
which is using this.
So Mr. Fuad Halim,
absolutely.
first point is obviously the fact that when it comes to other people, the same rules don't apply, whether it's freedom of expression or the existing law on crackdown. It's different for different political parties and what is being said about their leaders. The second aspect is, when do you decide to act? Now, Tausif Khan, is the action in this case only happening because this man very clearly is of the opposite kind of ideology, very clearly has a pro-BJP or a right-wing ideology and is lashing out at Mamata Banerjee. I'm sure he is not the only one out there who is mocking or abusing Mamata Banerjee.
No, you see, the Chief Justice designate has articulated this very beautifully when he said that there are two sides to the free speech debate. One side is, we should not cross the boundary line. There are many people we have seen in the recent years who suffer from verbal diarrhea, and they go on to say whatever they feel like, and then they get away with it. And on the other side is that people who have right to dissent, and when they voice their dissent, they are subjected to abuse of power. And we have seen that starting from the death of Gauri Lankesh.
No.
Now there are two sides. There's no doubt or anything. This law and this logic is very clear.
No. So what are you saying?
Now coming to your point.
What
yes.
are you saying? Should abusive trolls, people who resort to abusive language on social media, should they be jailed or not?
If they violate the law, yes, the law must take act. The law enforcing agencies must act. We have the Law Cyber Crimes Act are there. And therefore, what we have seen during the day of Kali Puja, during the day of Diwali, when the entire nation was greeting each other, was wishing each other happy Diwali and happy Kali Puja. On that day, we have seen one man who suffers from verbal diarrhea, like so many other people in India today. He went on commenting.
See, there you said, like so many other people in this country today. Now, I find it a little, disturbing that the rest of the country is told, ignore the trolls, block the trolls, move on in life, don't take it seriously because the police doesn't have the bandwidth to act. But if the same verbal diarrhea person of an opposite political ideology targets the chief minister, the cops somehow swing in action and arrest this man.
No. There are ways of targeting your political opponent. You may criticize your political opponent, but look at the language that has been used. And
I'll tell you the
way has been registered.
I will tell you the way,
Should
Tanvi.
the police not act on
what she has to say is I will send you rasgullas made of mud pebbles so that you lose your teeth. This is the way of addressing to a prime minister by a chief minister.
You cannot
bring on the same narrative again and again. Position.
That does not justify.
Addressing to the prime minister, who's again a constitutional position. What example is she setting?
This BJP spokesperson
I am not siding, sir.
Accused.
I am saying very clearly, whatever the person may have said, and if it is derogatory, the law must act. But also, when you profess this thing, that Mamata Banerjee was addressed as
I can't understand either of you two. If you keep talking over each other, I don't know who told you that this is a good way of debating. Calm down, please. If I don't understand either of you, what's the point? Shikha Mukherjee wants to make a point, and then I go across to Vivekanand Nartham. Yes.
Yeah. What is amazing is that we fail to recognize that it's not necessarily a government which is or a political leader who's making any of these who's running riot by trolling. Look at what happened in Muzaffarpur in Bihar. 49 people, seven Aparna Sen, Adur Gopalakrishnan, Ramchandra Guha, etc. They were accused of sedition by someone, and the court then threw it out. But till the court threw it out, did we all tracked the language that was used against them? Has anybody taken action? Just because is the Prime Minister above criticism? And therefore, anybody who's written an open letter, should they be should their voices be throttled?
I fail to understand.
And should they be charged for sedition? And then should they be trolled in the language that they were? And more than that, they were being heckled on television by people. It was amazing. What kind of intolerance has got into the system that we cannot tolerate criticism by very responsible people? That is why when today there is this crisis of not just cybercrime departments and police setups in the states not having the capacity to deal with the kind of cybercrime that is exploding exponentially.
Yes.
But far more interesting is that
Tanvi, I would like to rebut her.
there is a systematic violation of the idea that freedom of expression, the idea that underlies freedom of expression,
Correct.
which is dissent, difference, and an opinion.
Correct. So the lines are getting blurred. And when we are told that the freedom of expression is not absolute, you know, we must also understand that that depends on who's on the other
Tanvi, I
side
would
taking
like
that
to rebut to her.
decision, whether they want to categorize dissent, whether they want to categorize criticism, you know, under this freedom of expression law and take action accordingly. Mr. Raman Malik, please do respond, but do keep in mind that Vivekanand Nartham is patiently waiting for his turn once you're done.
Yes. See, the basic point is I would, differ with her. And one thing is very clear. The idea of freedom of expression is always going to be less than the idea of India. And secondly, let me address this thing also. These very same people she's been referring to are the juggernaut which kind of address and cry for the red corridor and the people operating in the red corridor, the Maoists.
No, they are not
and
in
these
jail.
are the same people.
They are not
who
in
have a
jail. They have
problem
not
with
been
the idea of
convicted
India.
of any
Why
crime
not
in this
try? You
country.
have
One
to
minute,
be
1 minute, please.
They
Chika
are
Mukherjee, may I just clarify
that
on
is
this to
degrading
Mr.
of
Raman Malik?
democracy in India,
This is exactly
which
the
you,
Mr.
kind
Raman
of
which
Malik,
people like you do not understand.
Mr. Raman
which you
Malik,
want
if
to
they are
spread to
if
others.
genuinely
That is
plotting
the
against this country,
shallowness of your
by all
debate.
means,
That
calm
is the
down. Let me
shallowness of
make
your
my
mindset.
point. Why are you getting so
You
agitated?
don't know what to. You have no
If they are
way.
genuinely plotting against the country, Mr. Raman Malik, by all means,
I'm
prove
not
the
getting
case and
agitated at
put
you,
them
Tanvi.
behind bars. But until you do that, are you telling me tonight that it is justified for people to abuse
people
them?
of India have to prove they've
Is it
already
justified
proven.
for people to troll them, to abuse them and harass them?
These are people who use their brain to abuse India. They will be handled by people of
You
India
are
in the right
abusing
manner.
India,
Who
in
has
my
abused
opinion.
India?
And we
Now,
do
what are
not
you going to
support
say to
trolling
that?
or
Who has abused
doing
India, Mr. Raman
violence
Malik?
against them. But they should be
Writing
countered.
a letter to the Prime Minister does not equal to abusing
The
the
same
country.
people who,
May I
who
also
try
point
to
out
talk
legally the
about
sedition
and
case has been thrown
justifying
out.
the Maoist activities in India, are they right? Or the people who fight for the Kashmiri separatists, are they right? The people she's been referring to are the same who fight for the
No, they
separatists
are
of
not.
Kashmir, who
Please
fight
get your
for the
facts
Maoists of
right.
the
So
Red
you
Corridor.
believe it's all right for the
Those
country to
people are
abuse
against
them
the idea of
This is
India.
without any
ridiculous.
evidence of
You
what
have
their
no facts
activities
about
are?
them.
Okay.
You can't just
No, it's
Subjective
not
again.
right to
something that
abuse.
the trolls have
It
been
is right
saying.
to take them
Trolls
and show them
may
their
not be
right
informed, but
places.
you should be informed.
But
You
in
run a
legal,
television
in
program.
the legal framework.
Ill-informed,
Vivekanand Nartham, this is
ill-informed
the
opinion
point
is
that we
not
have been
worth even
trying to
talking
make.
to.
Madam,
Is that now being
madam,
also
why is
validated by the
it
political representatives on the panel tonight? That if your ideology is different, then the freedom of expression definition is different for you.
All right, Tanvi, CGI designate Justice Bobde's statements here in this regard, I think, provoke a debate, and it's a good thing to start with, that we have been revisiting this entire notion of freedom of expression, freedom of thought, and liberty as a concept. Yes, there is no denial that the powers have used and abused the freedom of expression, these entire notions for their favor. So that is why certain people have unbridled powers when it comes to expressing their own views and thoughts and expressions, everything. And certain other people have been, have been subjugated, have been controlled, have been regulated. And that is why it's a good thing to start with. And I must congratulate you to have organized discussion on this particular topic to educate your viewers. Apart, having said that, I'm as a student of political science, I would like to bring in that notion of negative liberty and the positive liberty. The liberty which is unbridled, particularly the notions that came, the state must be a laissez-faire state, the state must intervene less and less, and it should confine to the minimum spheres of human life. And then the positive liberty said, the state has to initiate this positive liberty, to ensure the welfare of people. And having said that, and then there is another notion that we also have discussed in our constitution, that to ensure the unity, integrity, and sovereignty of the country, and to ensure there is the morality prevails, and we don't descend down to immoral society, there are certain reasonable restrictions which are imposed on the entire notion of liberty. And that is in this context, as I would say, the derogatory language, we will have to see the severity of the language that has been used, and we will have to control such elements. Whether to put them behind bars, whether to put them in jails is another question that we will have to deliberate upon. But I think we need to have certain reasonable restrictions on entire notion of liberty itself. Otherwise, we will descend into an anarchic society.
Yeah,
There is
but
another
who's
aspect to
deciding
this
these?
particular
Who's
issue,
drawing the
as I
line and
remember.
defining this, or is it subjective to the government in power?
That's very true. That's true. That's true. That is why in the beginning of my comments I said that this entire notion of regulations have been used and abused. That needs to be discussed. But we cannot have unregulated, absolutely free society, which will then lead into anarchy. Another thing that I would like to bring in is, if there is somebody who is important person in the society, and if you have gone on criticizing or writing something very immoral, very derogatory, then that might spark sort of the riot or the violence, and then the state has to come into picture to control that. Again, then the state will have to use the force. Force sometimes becomes important, and that unavoidable, in order to ensure the safety and security. But I would like to bring another perspective, that is, this particular person, Mr. Bhattacharya, who wrote this Facebook post, I would condemn. I haven't read what he has written, but if he has written something very immoral and very obnoxious about the head of the state, then that is condemnable. There is no doubt about that. But why a person from the Singur, we need to revisit. When Mamata Banerjee came to power, she rode on the unrest that prevailed in the Singur, in the villages of Singur and Nandigram, and how this entire unrest, she sat on that, and then she came to power. Now, why is this kind of language is being spoken against her? So has she failed to deliver to the aspirations of people? That is also a question that we will have to look into.
Yes, Mr. Tausif Khan. Is that why you are cracking down on people who are criticizing Mamata Banerjee?
No. The gentleman just mentioned that he has not read the comment, and therefore he is not aware whether this person's comment has anything to do with the
Mr.
aspirations
Tausif Khan,
of the people or political.
I said, another thing, I condemn that. I condemn that.
Yes, you do. But let me tell you, the comment that were made was about the kitchen of Mamata Banerjee, was about the meal prepared by Mamata Banerjee, and was about the Kali Puja celebration of Mamata Banerjee. This is the subject of the comment is this.
No, I would like to intervene over here. Is this for the first time you people are arresting?
One minute. Can I please listen to what Tausif Khan has to say? I am trying. Mr. Nartham, 1 minute, please. I want to understand what Tausif Khan has to say as to why this man was arrested. Because he spoke about Mamata Banerjee's kitchen and the fact that the prasad and non-vegetarian food was being cooked in the same kitchen. Is that right?
For that matter, I would say, for the benefit of the viewer, you might as well run the comment that has been made.
No, I can't, because it's heavily abusive.
Does anyone approve of that comment?
No, nobody does.
Justify that comment?
No.
Therefore, the question arises: what is the mentality of this person? Where does he derive the strength to? Why does he suffer from that verbal diarrhea? And why he wants to infest the society with hate and venom? Please, for the sake of clarity and understanding, go and read the comment if you do not want to telecast that on this. And in fact,
Mr.
it is
Khan,
appropriate that you do not telecast
Mr.
it.
Khan,
The comment is not related
Mr.
to any
Khan,
state. One
in the
may
recently
criticize the chief
concluded Lok
minister for
Sabha
any state
elections,
policy.
your leader avoided to go to the to the districts of Singur and Nandigram. Such is the situation. You assured them so much, and you rode on the unrest that prevailed over there in those states, and you did nothing for them, and that is why you have to avoid this leader.
I mean, it
So
cannot
that
be denied. It cannot
that
be
is my
denied,
point.
Fuad
That
Halim,
is
Have the
my
courage to
point.
go
that
and
Mamata
visit
Banerjee, time and again,
that
Fuad
huge
Halim,
villages
Mamata
in
Banerjee
Singur
has
and
displayed
Nandigram.
intolerance when it comes to people who question her, when it comes to people who criticize her, when it comes to people who make jokes about her. She has displayed that same intolerance
This
that she calls
accused-
out the
For that
BJP
matter,
for.
some-
Fuad
This
Halim.
accused has not spoken about Singur movement. This
Even for
accused
that
has
matter,
not
when they
spoken
chanted
about
Jai
the
Shri Ram,
promises made
clear
by the
Fuad Halim,
government.
please. No, this is
And
not the
she
politics
seems
over
to be
Singur.
a
It's the point about whether a politician and a sitting chief
No, it
minister
has a
can
context,
take
Tanvi.
criticism against them. And I'm again saying it's not about the specific post. It's about a larger pattern that
complaint-
Mamata Banerjee has displayed. Fuad Halim.
Well, it's very
Please
clear this seems to
understand,
be a
the
malady
action
of
is not
those who
taken
are
by the
in
chief
power.
minister office.
The
It's a
political
complaint lodged in
organization
police.
of those who are in power, they would like to have their own troll armies. They would like to afford their own members and the people who support them the full leeway to comment in whatsoever manner they would like to. But they would at the same time not allow anybody to
Tanvi,
use
can
the
I comment,
same
please?
bandwidth, if I could quote the incumbent CJI, to have that same bandwidth. So I think so Narendra Modi and Mamata Banerjee, I think so are representatives of the same malady. The BJP wants to have its troll army all over India against whom they would not allow the government to act. But if anybody uses the same thing, they will act. Mamata Banerjee wants
Mr.
to have her
Halim,
troll army against the opposition,
Mr. Halim,
where
in
the
your
state
34 years
initially
of
will not
regime,
act against them.
how you
But
suppress
definitely,
the
if
freedom of
anybody gives a
expression,
different
everybody
opinion, they
knows
will act.
that.
So I think so. This is. Sir, if you could just fast forward those 34 years and come to 2019 at this point of time, we are discussing this. If you could say good
No,
morning
that
to
is right.
everybody and wake
it's
up.
not. It's not
Now,
just about
as far as we
it's
are
not
concerned,
just about
as
West
of today,
Bengal. Being
I
a
think
student
so
of
that in
political science, I understand
2019,
how you
the
have
power of
suppressed
social
entire freedom,
media
idea of freedom of
wants
expression
to be
across the
harnessed
world,
by the
wherever
Bharatiya
you are in
Janata
power,
Party and the
whether
Trinamool
that's in China,
Congress,
whether that in
and
USSR,
they would do not want to.
wherever you
They do
were,
not
you
want
have so
the people
rampantly,
who are going to use this on behalf
you
of the
have
BJP and
rampantly
the
impinged
TMC
upon the freedom
to
as an
actually
idea.
behave responsibly. On the other hand, it is very clear that if you allow government power to these people like Narendra Modi as Prime Minister and Mamata Banerjee as Chief Minister, they are going to use it in a partisan way. And that partisan way is expressing itself. If you say something and you're a TMC person, you're going to go scot-free in West Bengal.
Yes,
If you are
absolutely.
a
Tanvi, I
BJP
would
person
like
and
to
you're going to say
comment.
something anywhere else in India ruled by Bharatiya Janata Party, you're going to go scot-free.
Absolutely.
So this is actually
And I'm not too sure it would be any different if your party was in power and somebody was from your party was saying something, Mr.
That's
Fuad
right.
Halim. But because you're not in government right now, we've been out of power for a while, we don't know.
Well, in Kerala, in Kerala,
Now we have
Can
seen
I
how they have
comment,
ruled
please?
for 34
in
years,
Kerala, you have
not
found
only in West
evidence
Bengal,
of this.
even in
Okay.
Kerala.
I also have
Can I
journalist
comment, please?
Kinshuk Nag on the phone
China,
line with me.
everywhere.
And if you all will just give me a couple of minutes, I want to bring in Mr. Kinshuk Nag also on the phone line with me. He's traveling right now. We couldn't get him live, but he had a view that he wanted to share with us on this issue. Mr. Kinshuk Nag, the fact of the matter is that you have the next Chief Justice of India who says there is too much freedom of speech for some, too little for others. The definitions of freedom of speech vary depending on who you are and who is ruling your state.
Yeah, that's true. In fact,
Yes, Mr. Nag, go ahead, please.
yeah, basically I want to say, number one, I am not a supporter of Mr. Modi, but in this case, I think Mamata Banerjee is in the wrong. And Mamata Banerjee is, if I may use the word, gone off her rockers. She has been behaving in this fashion for the last few months and years. and she thinks as if she's the Empress of India and she can go and do anything. It's an affront on the press. It's not an affront on the common people, but on the press also. And the entire press is so much scared of her. And she goes and does anything. It's basically a political battle going on between Mamata Banerjee and the BJP because Mamata Banerjee is depending on minority votes to win the elections, whereas BJP is depending on majority votes. And the fight between them is now aggravated to the point that all sorts of things are happening there. The elections are 2 years later, so this is going to only intensify. So, but in this case, I think Mamata Banerjee has just gone crazy, basically trying to arrest everybody who says anything against her. Don't think I'm supporting Mr. Modi, but in the case of Mamata Banerjee, there is nothing that we can say to support her. And she has to be condemned for this. And as a member of the press, you should realize that she's also all the time trying to keep the press down. And even the main papers in Calcutta, they will tell you, are on one side or the other, and they write with a lot of fear. I was the editor of Times of India and Gujarat when Mr. Modi was the chief minister. But that sort of fear we never had. But today when I find editors in Calcutta, they are damn scared of this person. So this is something we have to condemn. And what the central government is doing and BJP is doing, I don't want to discuss now. But Mamata Banerjee is clearly gone off her rocker and she should be restrained and constrained.
Mr. Shukla, I take your point. Thank you for joining us. Though in this specific case, I do believe that that comment was totally unnecessary, extremely abusive, and completely unacceptable. The question, though, we are asking is that does the action and the gravity of the action or the extent of action vary? And did this man end up in jail not just because he used those words and he abused Mamata Banerjee, but because he was somebody from an opposing ideology, but because he was somebody who's clearly from his Facebook posts and you know some of the other posts that he shared, a right-wing ideology person. So that's the other question that we need to look at. But Tausif Khan, to the point that King Shuknak, a senior journalist with years of experience, has raised, that while Mamata Banerjee claims she stands for freedom of expression and doesn't gag the media, there are many in Bengal who tell a different story. Tausif Khan, can you hear me?
Sorry,
Yes.
was that a question? Can you repeat the question?
Yes, the question was to you, to what the senior journalist on our panel was just saying, that even in Bengal, the media, there is a pressure that Mamata Banerjee is very, very intolerant to criticism about her government, that while she says she's all for freedom of expression of the press, that's not really the truth on ground.
No, it is inappropriate to make such a general remark. If you have an incident, if you have a particular event, you report it, you take action against it. But to come and make a generalized remark, which is in a way which is going to benefit the opponent political party, is not appropriate for someone who claims to be independent and coming from the media fraternity.
Journalist has
I was
spoken
very
about
surprised by the
fact
comment
that
he was making.
he's not a supporter of Mr. Modi.
Please stop. Please let me complete, sir. No, he did say that, but
Sir,
he
who
was
is
clearly not
supporting
aware
the
of the
act
topic
of
debate
that
today.
person?
Sir, please let me
Nobody
complete.
is supporting the act
Let me
of the
complete.
person, Mr. Khan.
No, but
The topic
if
of
you
debate
hear
is
the statement
intolerance
he
by the
made,
people in power.
sir,
It is not
clearly he was
about
not
that
aware.
particular remark.
Then he was clearly not aware of the topic of debate. Otherwise, he would not have supported the accused about the comment during the eve of Diwali and Kali Puja, because he came and straight away said that he was criticizing Mamata Banerjee. Very good. You can criticize a public figure, you can criticize the chief minister of the state, but you can criticize on a particular event, on a particular topic. You cannot come and make a general statement, because then that becomes political, and that helps the political opponent. Then you are not independent. Then you become politically inclined to and helping the other political opponent. I am saying very clearly that the gentleman was not aware of the topic of the debate. He has not read the comment. Otherwise, he would not have said what he said today.
Raman Malik.
Tanvi, can I come in now, or do I have to keep waiting?
Yes, I already said, Mr. Raman Malik, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So the gentleman, Mr. Khan, has been talking about verbal diarrhea. Probably the people who are suffering from verbal diarrhea is his top leadership like Derek O'Brien or Mamata Banerjee, who can say anything for a sitting prime minister of the country and expect that it is just okay to abuse him in any way that she feels like. But that is not verbal diarrhea up to him. And at the same point, Mr. Fawad Ali, he's talking about trolls and he's forgetting about the comrades that he have who openly accept that forget abusing, killing a person is also okay. His sitting people in Kerala have narrated it. Now my point here is, let's not go on to comparing trolling and killing somebody. Let's not go about the verbal diarrhea that they explain. My point is very simple. We have taken criticism from the press, we have taken criticism from people with different ideologies. It is not that the law has not acted upon or things like that. But the point here in debate, Tanvi, is the most important issue, and that is that once, fine, this person, if he's written something derogatory, the law must act. But at the same time, there has to be a tolerance by a leader sitting in a position and understanding that with power comes criticism.
If only political leaders
with
understood
deceit
that.
comes criticism.
I don't know, Shikha Mukherjee.
And you have to take it in your
Shikha
stride.
Mukherjee, can you think
Yes.
of any big politician who's shown, you know, that kind of tolerance or even a sense of humor to say it's all right, it doesn't matter to me?
I think the best example of
आप किसी
how
को मौत का
intolerant
साधु
or
अगर
how
बोल दो
lacking
और
in
वो
humor
बिल्कुल कुछ ना आपके ऊपर
the
act करे,
political
that is
class
tolerance.
is that there was a lady who was standing outside the secretariat in
Ma'am, you are no
Lucknow
less.
and saying
You are
that she
no less.
wanted
You
to
are a
marry
Mr. Raman
leftist.
Malik, why
Yogi
are you
You are
yelling
a proper
unnecessarily, sir?
leftist. You
Calm
have
down,
an
Raman
agenda.
Malik.
Don't
Let her
say-
make her point at least. Let me listen to what she has to say. How are you getting agitated? I have not even managed to hear what she's saying. Let her speak at least. Yes, Shikha Mukherjee.
I said, the lack of sense of humor is quite evident.
I've been able to hear
Here,
what she's
there
saying.
was a lady standing outside the gate of the Lucknow Secretariat. She wanted to get married to Yogi Adityanath. Instead of ignoring this situation, she was arrested. And for Lord's sake, get yourself a sense of humor.
The lady wasn't arrested, ma'am. The lady wasn't arrested.
It is two journalists were arrested for
journalist
reporting this
who
and
wrote
debating
that
it.
on the
For
Facebook
Lord's
was
Please
arrested,
do not,
and he was
please
not
do
supposed
not
to be writing
bring
what he
humor
wrote.
into
it is
the
a
religious
ridiculous story.
practices, and
Yes.
It
Yogi
is a ridiculous
Adityanath is a
situation.
mathadi.
You cannot,
You have to
you cannot
understand.
draw
Why
parallels.
He has left his
While
journalists being
worldly
arrested?
Miss
life
Mukherjee
to
seems to
serve
be
Okay, one at a time, one at a time,
Something
please.
which is
And I think if my memory serves me right, I think
So
Mr.
do not-
Vivekanand
you cannot be
Nartham
so
is right.
clever.
So I'm just going to
make
correct
fun
that
of
part.
their religion. Do
The
not make
journalists
fun of
who
the
wrote
religion
the
with
story
your
about
leftist
this lady and
ideology.
her claims were the ones who were arrested, which also I don't
Yeah,
think was
that's what I was
absolutely
saying.
necessary to arrest people and put them
Yes.
behind bars for, for this kind of a story. Some amount of tolerance could have been shown. But I don't know, is any of our panelists able to give us one example of a politician who's shown tolerance about criticism and jokes and memes and maybe even abusive trolls? We show tolerance every day on a daily basis. Celebrities, reporters, news anchors
see the
are
number
tolerant
of
to these trolls on a
Tanvi,
daily
Go ahead
basis.
and research on how many times Narendra Modi has been abused by all of
Tanvi-
the people, whether in press and political or so-called intellectual. He's been continuously abused, trolled, but he has never acted or taken revenge.
Okay.
He doesn't need to. There are enough
Tanvi,
people
there is
out
another
there
aspect
who are
that I
doing it
wanted
on
to
his
add to
behalf,
this.
including those who filed a sedition case
Correct.
Doesn't bother about
against
lowlifes.
these 49 public intellectuals and accused them of sedition for writing a letter to him.
Correct.
He doesn't need to do anything. He just needs
They
to
should be.
let this army of
No,
trolls
that's not such a simple case,
Had I
ma'am.
not
That's
been a
not such a
spokesperson
simple
from
Okay,
case.
the party, I would
Vivekanand
have
Nartham
We
filed a
wants to
have
make a
seen
point.
how the Maoist ideology has penetrated Yes.
Maoist
Tanvi,
ideology
there
has
is another
nothing to do
aspect
with
that
the
I
letter
wanted
that
to
you're
add to
writing
this
to the
discussion.
Prime Minister. The sedition case that was filed has been withdrawn. Why are we still trying to justify the action that was taken against these celebrities?
No, no.
Why are we
See,
still trying to justify
Tanvi,
them
we
being
don't have to
abused?
look
I
at.
don't
Why do
understand
you
that,
need
Mr.
to pin
Nartham.
a
I
label
thought
on them
you
and
Who said
allow
they are
believe
this?
that
What is
nobody
celebrities?
should be
this?
Tanvi,
abused.
What
there are
is
two
this?
Who
things.
said they
Why
are
do you need to
celebrities,
label
ma'am?
people?
Vivekanand Nartham,
The
please.
two things that I would like to put, yes, the two things that I would like to put. One, as a society, instead of all the time pointing our fingers towards the politicians and the people in power, we also will have to ask a question to ourselves as small karyakartas who are aspiring to, scale up the ladder. Sometimes, not in every case, the chief minister or somebody who is holding the power or the seat of power is involved in arresting these the people involved in these small incidences. So sometimes these for example, in this case also there is somebody called Mr. Shantanu Banerjee, I suppose.
Yes.
He writes a letter to the police personnel and they arrest him. So sometimes they also have to earn their points to scale up the ladder. And in a competitive society that we have evolved into, this is also a question we as a society, we as individuals in the society need to ask, should we be part of this kind of thing?
Okay.
That is one thing. Another thing is this. The government will have to, and as a student of political science, I have always, as political science and international relations, I adhere to the idea of realism. The nation must do everything it can in order to strengthen its power within the country and outside the
Okay,
country.
no, so if that,
It
I mean,
cannot
I don't know if
remain
you, if by that
on the
you mean
mercy
that
of
we need to
somebody
get more
else.
specific
It
into
cannot
freedom of
and
speech,
that is why,
where it applies, to what extent, what kind of abuses are not under freedom of
Yes,
speech.
there is
Whether you can abuse a chief minister, you can't abuse a chief minister, but you can abuse other people on social media. Maybe we just need to put it down in black and white.
Tanvi,
Let me go across to a couple of our viewers on the phone
one
line on
small
this
point
story
that I
as well.
wanted to make.
Mr. Nartham, I'll come back to you. Let me get in few more voices. Siddharth is on the phone line calling us from Pune. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi. Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please. We can hear you.
Listen, I'm basically from Kolkata,
Okay.
but I've been in Pune from quite a long time. Honestly speaking, Kolkata energy wants to have a separate country altogether. So, I mean, why we are wasting time on debating on Mamata Banerjee? She's an arrogant lady. Nobody loves her in Kolkata. She has her own thinking. And on the other hand, we have some party called CPIF who has no standard in Indian society. So it's a waste of time to discussing on Mamata Banerjee.
Well, I disagree, Siddharth, purely for a reason, because she is the chief minister of a state in our country. West Bengal is still very much part of our country. And Mamata Banerjee is the chief minister elected by the people and brought to power.
But she does
Her
not consider
actions
the Prime Minister
must
as a
be
Prime
questioned.
Minister.
She is also accountable to us, like any other sitting chief minister or elected representative of our country is, and which is why we ask these questions. But thank you for calling and sharing your views. Dr. Kapil on the phone line from Delhi. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi. I just want to say that freedom of speech has always been selective. And people who can't endure criticism would like to always draw the line and say that we are being hit below the belt. On the contrary, rather than empathizing and seeing why somebody is wanting to vent out his or her anger, is completely ignored. For example, when we talk about the authority, if you look at even the judges, the Supreme Court of India, you would see no judge is ever going to complain if they are praised on social media. But at the same time, if you want to insult a judge or if you wish to write something against a judge by taking their name, you would be under the contempt of court. So don't you think this is also the selective way of drawing the line about freedom of speech? And similarly, this percolates from the Supreme Court of India or the judiciary system to the political parties also, and it goes down the ladder. The point is, at the end of the day, it is the common man who has to suffer, because everything from the common man, whether they can say what they want to say or not. But as far as the politicians, political parties are concerned, they would use freedom of speech, even the judiciary, as per their own convenience, which is extremely sad, and nothing is being done to make them accountable.
Well, after couple, very interesting view there, and thank you for calling. I'm not too sure. Maybe the Chief Justice of India designate is listening to what you have to say, and maybe he gives it that a thought as well. But Shikha Mukherjee, you know, how do we fix this? Can we actually do anything about it? Maybe is it time to define slightly more what freedom of speech entails and where action should be taken? You know, can we actually get rid of this differentiation that happens all the time?
But Tanvi, I'm in a dilemma about that, frankly speaking, because the more you strengthen the law, the less scope there is for the political class to mind their manners. Frankly, the fact of the matter remains that the intolerance that the political class exhibits, be it Mamata Banerjee, be it Yogi Adityanath, or be it the BJP, or be it any other people who are in power, they are thin-skinned, they're touchy, they have no sense of humor, they also have no sense of proportion. Their reactions are outrageously they're simply outrageous. They just fly off the handle if they're being criticized. The fact is that if this country believes in freedom, and it believes in liberty, and it believes in the freedom of expression,
Right.
then it applies as much to the political class as it does to the media, as it does to the ordinary citizen.
Correct.
Therefore, a little less touchiness.
Yes.
And a law is not required for that. The law is already there. There is no point in spending an inordinate amount of time and an inordinate amount of money in drafting, in tweaking the law, because it's not that a new law is going to be done.
Right.
It's that it's going to be tweaked. To spend time and a lot of money on tweaking the law will provide employment to a few people, but it will not solve the problem. The problem is that the political class is intolerant. The political parties have become intensely intolerant, and they are using the social media as a means of heckling, bullying, abusing, targeting, and trashing people.
All right.
With a different opinion. I mean, the whole business of who is a Maoist, and they're creating these labels for their own convenience. This is ridiculous.
It is, and then you create these labels, and you create categories, and then you mask it all, mask criticism, mask dissent, and bring it all under the umbrella of freedom of expression, and then that's where the differentiation begins. And so I will reiterate, because I completely agree with what Justice Bobde has to say. There are two sides to the freedom of speech debate, with some getting away with anything and everything in public and on social media platforms, while others get manhandled for expressing their views. And I'm not saying it's just one political party that does it. And I'm not saying it's just one state government or one state police that does it. I'm saying all political parties and politicians and their respective state police departments are guilty of this kind of a biased behavior. And that needs to change. Maybe we can begin with what Shikha Mukherjee is saying. Maybe the politicians need to lighten up a little, loosen up a little, stop being so touchy. And if you are going to implement the law, then by all means ensure that the law gets implemented for everybody with the same benchmark. As the nation debates a two-day visit of the well-publicized European Union parliamentary delegation in Jammu and Kashmir, terrorists continue to target innocent civilians. 5 people were killed after terrorists shot at non-Kashmiri laborers, most of them from West Bengal, who were working in Kulgaon. This attack is the latest in a spate of such terror attacks that we've seen, where non-locals, civilians but non-locals, have been targeted since the clampdown in Kashmir. Let's go across to Fareed for more. Fareed, take us through the details.
Well, yes, 5 non-locals were shot dead, as you rightly said, and this was the biggest attack of recent times. Now, we know non-locals, be it laborers or truck drivers and even traders, apple traders, have been targeted in the last 15-20 days in South Kashmir. And almost every district has seen this kind of violence. Now, when the last incident took place, the security force and the police claimed that they have an SOP, and they have drawn a strategy, and they will secure these people. But then we saw the biggest attack yesterday. So quite clearly, these people are on the radar of these militant outfits. And today, police claim that one militant was killed when a bullet ricocheted. His own bullet killed him in a way. And when he shot at a truck driver, they claimed that he was from the Hizbul Mujahideen, was active from 2018. So police says that the Hizbul Mujahideen is responsible for at least the truck driver's killing. But then there have been other instances, including the yesterday's case. So far, no headway. Investigations have been started, but clearly more onus on the police, and the pressure is increasing to do something about it, secure these people before it's too late.
Fareed, very quickly also, what is it that the state and the security agencies and the authorities are saying? What is the messaging here? Why are the non-locals, why are civilians to begin with being targeted?
Well, you can very clearly link it with the abrogation of 35A370. Now, the police says that this obviously is an attempt to ensure that non-locals are driven out of the Kashmir Valley, and if at all anyone has any intention of coming in to the valley and trying to come in, settle, or do something here, he will think twice. So it probably is directed towards fulfilling that cause, but obviously probably there is much more to it than just that particular aspect, because probably this is the first time we've seen that non-locals have been targeted in such brazen and brutal manner. And this has happened after the abrogation of 35A and 370. So you can clearly link it with that. But as I said, a lot more needs to be done by the police, army, and the security agencies, because they are there in huge numbers in South Kashmir. But in spite of that, these attacks are happening. Though, yes, these are soft targets, they are sitting ducks. And humanly, it's not possible to secure each and every one of them. But then you cannot sit back and see all this happening. The onus is, as I said, on the security agencies to draw a counter strategy and do something about it, because otherwise, non-locals and truck drivers, no one would want to come into the Kashmir Valley. Obviously, their lives are in the line of fire.
Yes, and so obviously the idea also is to, hit at the entire economic ecosystem that functions for the valley, whether it's trade, apples going out, people coming in to work there, the whole idea of integration. That's what is being hit out there. The economy of the valley, that is what they're looking to choke. It seems like that for now. We will, of course, keep a track. A long series of these incidents have happened just in the last 2 weeks, and something needs to be seriously looked at. Fareed, thanks so much for joining us and bringing us the latest from Kashmir. 11 civilians killed in the valley just in the last couple of weeks.